My name is Rosanna Taylor, and I'm 34 years old. The champagne bubbles tickled my nose as I surveyed my new mansion's grand foyer filled with New York's elite. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but the area code was from home. Hello! Aunt Patricia's sugary voice, absent for a decade, flooded my ear. Rosanna, darling, I heard about your mansion party tonight. The family and I would love to stop by. 10 years of silence now. I gazed at the crystal chandelier I designed myself. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had family show up only when you're successful. Growing up in rural Montana shaped me in ways I never fully appreciated until I left. Our family home was modest but comfortable, sitting on the edge of a small town where everyone knew everyone. My father worked as the manager at the local bank, a position that earned him respect in the community. Mom taught 5th grade at the elementary school, beloved by students and parents alike. In our house, I was always the odd one out. My brother Jack, 7 years older, was the golden child. He excelled at everything he touched, from academics to sports, and was destined for medical school from the moment he could pronounce stethoscope. Stephanie, my sister, who was 5 years my senior, was the beauty of the family, with her perfect blonde hair and dazzling smile. She followed a sensible path, studying accounting and always doing exactly what was expected of her. Then there was me, Rosanna the dreamer. While my siblings colored inside the lines, I was creating entirely new pictures. I'd spend hours sketching furniture designs or rearranging my bedroom, much to my mother's frustration. "Why can't you just be normal?" became a common refrain in our household. Our extended family was large and close-knit, at least on the surface. Aunt Patricia, my mother's younger sister, was particularly influential. With her designer clothes and opinions on everything, she was the unofficial family matriarch, despite not being the oldest. She had a way of making decisions for everyone without seeming to do so. Uncle Thomas and his wife lived just 2 towns over with their 3 children, who were all around Jack's age. Cousins, second cousins, and relatives whose exact relation I could never quite figure out completed our family tree. Summer family reunions at Grandma's farmhouse were the highlight of each year. The sprawling property would come alive with laughter, arguments, and the smell of barbecue. Tables groaned under the weight of casseroles, pies, and Grandma's famous potato salad. Kids would run wild through the fields, playing elaborate games of hide-and-seek or catching fireflies in mason jars as twilight fell. Those early memories were tinged with warmth and belonging. I remember racing my cousins to the swimming hole, eating watermelon on the porch steps, juice dripping down our chins, and falling asleep to the sound of adults talking and laughing on the patio. Back then, family meant safety. It meant home. Grandma was the only one who truly saw me. While everyone else was busy pushing me toward practical pursuits, she would sit beside me as I sketched, her arthritis-gnarled hands gently turning the pages of my sketchbook. "You have a gift, Rosanna," she would say, her voice soft but certain. "You see the world differently. Never let anyone take that away from you." She had been an amateur painter in her youth before marriage, and children claimed her time. Sometimes she would show me her old canvases, hidden away in the attic scenes of Montana landscapes, captured in bold, impressionistic strokes. I saw in those paintings what might have been, and in her eyes I saw a silent urging not to make the same compromises. When I was 16, I met Daniel Reynolds. His family owned the largest car dealership in the county, and they lived in what passed for a mansion in our small town. He was handsome, with a confident smile, and the kind of easy charm that made everyone want to be around him. When he asked me to the winter formal, I could hardly believe it. Our romance bloomed quickly, intensely. Daniel was the first person outside of Grandma who seemed interested in my dreams. He would listen as I talked about wanting to study interior design, about creating spaces that could transform how people felt, or at least he pretended to listen. "You could design our house someday," he once said, and my young heart nearly exploded with joy at the implication of a future together. Those early days with Daniel felt like being seen for the first time. I would sketch designs for him, imagining our future home, not knowing that the foundation of our relationship was built on shifting sand. Not knowing that family, that blood, could sometimes be the source of the deepest betrayals. While I dreamed of New York and design school, my family had other plans. Dad wanted me to study business. Mom thought teaching would be a nice, stable career for a woman. Even Jack, during his rare visits home from medical school, would ruffle my hair and ask when I was going to get serious. Only Grandma and Daniel seemed to support my dreams. Or so I thought. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Thick cream paper with the embossed logo of the New York School of Design. My hands trembled as I opened it, slipping into the bathroom so no one would see. The first word was, "Congratulations," and my heart soared. Not only accepted, but offered a partial scholarship based on my portfolio. I waited until dinner to share the news, imagining my family's pride despite their previous doubts. I'd practiced what to say, how to explain that this was a prestigious school, that the scholarship validated my talent. "Absolutely not," my father said, his fork clattering against his plate. "We're not spending good money for you to chase some artistic fantasy in New York City." "But Dad, it's a scholarship, and I can work part-time to cover expenses." My mother's sigh cut through me like a knife. "Rosanna, be reasonable. What kind of career will you have? Drawing pretty pictures. How will you support yourself?" "Interior design is a real profession, Mom. People make good money doing it." "1 in 1,000, maybe?" Jack chimed in. "The rest wait tables and live in closets." "Why not study something practical at Montana State?" my mother suggested. "You could live at home, save money." The argument escalated, voices rising as my dream was dissected and dismissed. Stephanie remained silent, studying her plate with unusual intensity. "I'm going," I finally said, my voice shaking but determined. "I've already accepted." The silence that followed was deafening. Later that night, needing to see Daniel, I drove to his house unannounced. His car was in the driveway, but no one answered the door. Around back, light spilled from the pool house. Thinking he might be there, I approached quietly, not wanting to startle him. Through the window, I saw them. Stephanie and Daniel locked in an embrace that told me everything I needed to know. Her hands in his hair, his lips on her neck. My sister and my boyfriend. The two people I trusted most outside of Grandma. I must have made a sound because they suddenly broke apart, turning toward the window with matching expressions of guilt. I ran their voices calling after me, but I couldn't bear to hear their excuses. The confrontation the next day was worse than I could have imagined. They'd been seeing each other for months, they admitted. It had just happened. "You're always living in a fantasy world, Rosanna," Stephanie said, somehow making this about my failings rather than their betrayal. "Daniel needs someone grounded, someone with realistic plans." "You were leaving anyway," Daniel added, as if that justified everything. I looked to my parents for support, but their expressions told me they'd already known, perhaps even approved. Stephanie and Daniel made sense in their world, the accountant and the businessman's son, a practical union. 2 days later, Grandma died in her sleep. The doctor called it a heart attack, but I couldn't help feeling it was a broken heart at seeing what her family had become. At the funeral, I stood apart, a gulf between me and the rest of the mourners that felt unbridgeable. "She was worried about you," Aunt Patricia said to me at the reception. "All that stress over your rebellion, not good for a woman her age." The implication was clear in their eyes. I had contributed to Grandma's death with my insistence on following my dreams. No one said it directly, but I saw it in their glances, heard it in their whispers. When the will was read, most of Grandma's modest estate went to my father, her only child. But she left me her sketchbooks and a small sum of money, just enough for a plane ticket and first month's rent in New York. The night before I left, my mother came to my room. I hoped for reconciliation, for understanding. Instead, she said, "If you walk this path, Rosanna, don't come back. Don't expect us to pick up the pieces when it falls apart." I left the next morning before dawn. No one came to say goodbye. New York City swallowed me whole. After the wide-open spaces of Montana, the city felt like being trapped in a beautiful, chaotic maze. My first apartment was a fifth-floor walk-up in Brooklyn, shared with 2 other girls. My portion was barely larger than a closet, but it was mine, paid for with Grandma's money and my determination. Classes at the design school were exhilarating and overwhelming. I was surrounded by talent, by people who had trained at prestigious art schools, whose parents had nurtured their creativity from childhood. My rural public school education felt woefully inadequate. but I had something many of them didn't: hunger. I stayed late in the studios, took every extra workshop offered, and absorbed criticism like water in a desert. Professor Williams, the head of the interior architecture department, became my mentor. A sharp-tongued woman in her 60s, she saw something in my work that even I didn't fully recognize. "You have a gift for emotional spaces," she told me after reviewing my first major project. "You don't just design rooms, you create feelings. Nurture that." While I threw myself into my studies, I also worked. Waitressing shifts that left my feet throbbing. Weekend gigs as a house painter. Anything to keep the lights on and food in my stomach. Some nights I'd fall into bed too exhausted to even cry about how much I missed home despite everything. I tried to maintain contact with my family. I sent letters with photos of my projects, descriptions of my classes, careful to sound positive but not boastful. Most went unanswered. When I called home, conversations were brief and superficial. "Everyone's fine," Mom would say. "Very busy. Jack's residency is going well." She never asked about my studies. The first Thanksgiving I couldn't afford to fly home, but I sent cards and small gifts. At Christmas, I scraped together enough for a plane ticket, only to be told that the family was going on a ski trip. "Maybe next year," Dad said. "The chalet doesn't have extra space." I learned through a distant cousin's Facebook post that Stephanie and Daniel got engaged the following spring. No one called to tell me. The invitation never came, though I saw the wedding photos online. My sister in white, my ex-boyfriend, now her husband, my family smiling without me. When Jack's wife had their first baby, I sent a hand-knitted blanket and asked if I could visit my new niece. "It's not a good time," he texted back. "The baby's immune system is still developing." 6 months later, the excuse was that they were establishing routines. Eventually, I stopped asking. Holidays became the hardest times. I'd see families together on the streets and restaurants, and the ache of exclusion would feel fresh again. For 3 years, I spent Christmas with whatever friends couldn't make it home, creating our own traditions of Chinese takeout and dollar store gift exchanges. Maya became my first real friend in New York. My roommate during my second year, she was a dance student with a loud laugh and zero filter. She didn't pity me when I finally told her about my family. Instead, she got angry on my behalf. "They don't deserve you," she declared, pouring more cheap wine into my mug. "Family is supposed to support your dreams, not crush them." Through Maya, I met other artists and students, people who understood what it meant to pursue a passion against all odds. Slowly, we formed our own kind of family, celebrating achievements, nursing failures, showing up for each other in ways my blood relatives never had. My first real design opportunity came in my 3rd year. A classmate's brother was opening a coffee shop and needed affordable interior design. My payment was mostly in coffee and exposure, but the project ignited something in me. The space I created with its warm woods and carefully considered lighting became popular quickly. People commented on how comfortable it felt, how they wanted to linger there. Other small commissions followed. A yoga studio, a boutique dressing room, a startup's tiny office. I developed a portfolio of real work, not just student projects. Professor Williams began recommending me to her connections. "You're building something," she told me. "Something uniquely yours." But at night, alone in my room, I'd sometimes look at old family photos and wonder if any of it was worth the cost. If I would ever stop feeling like I was missing a limb. The Silverman project changed everything. 5 years after arriving in New York, I was hired to redesign a penthouse in Tribeca. The clients were a young tech couple who had admired the coffee shop I'd designed. The budget wasn't enormous, but it was my first 5-figure commission. I poured everything into that apartment, sourcing vintage pieces from flea markets, collaborating with local artists, thinking about how every element would affect the emotional experience of the space. When Architectural Digest featured it in a Designers to Watch spread, my phone started ringing. One of those calls was from Alexander Brady. He had seen the Silverman apartment and wanted to meet. Alexander was something of a legend in New York real estate development, known for creating buildings that were both luxurious and innovative. We met at a rooftop restaurant overlooking Central Park. I expected a brief meeting, perhaps a small commission. Instead, we talked for hours. About design philosophy, about the emotional impact of spaces, about how the right environment could transform people's lives. "I've been looking for someone who thinks this way," he said as the sun set behind the Manhattan skyline. "Someone who sees beyond trends and understands what spaces can mean to people." 2 weeks later, he proposed a partnership. He would provide the capital and connections. I would be the creative force. Roselux Designs was born with offices in a converted warehouse in Chelsea and a small but talented team. Our first major project was the renovation of a boutique hotel in Soho. The pressure was immense, but the result exceeded even our expectations. Critics praised the emotional intelligence of the design. Bookings soared. More commissions followed, each more prestigious than the last. A museum cafe, a celebrated author's writing studio, a wellness retreat in the Catskills. Within 2 years, Roselux had become synonymous with spaces that felt both luxurious and deeply personal. My face appeared in design magazines. I was invited to speak at conferences. The Montana girl who had been told her dreams were impractical was now defining a new approach to design in one of the most competitive markets in the world. Through it all, Alexander was my champion and partner. Our professional relationship evolved naturally into friendship and then gradually into something deeper. Unlike Daniel, who had merely tolerated my ambitions, Alexander actively nurtured them. He challenged me, supported me, believed in my vision even when I doubted myself. The first time he kissed me was after we won the contract for a high-profile Manhattan restaurant. We had returned to the office late, exhilarated by the success, and the tension that had been building between us for months finally broke. His lips were soft against mine, his hands gentle as they framed my face. "I've been wanting to do that since we met," he confessed. Our relationship blossomed alongside our business. Alexander was unlike anyone I had ever known, simultaneously ambitious and kind, driven and patient. He understood my wounds without my having to explain them intuitively, giving me the space I needed while also showing me what true partnership could be. On our 1-year anniversary, he took me to Paris, supposedly for a design conference. Instead, on our second night, he led me to a private terrace overlooking the Seine, got down on one knee, and opened a small velvet box. "Rosanna Taylor," he said, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "You've transformed not just spaces, but my entire world. Will you marry me?" The ring was vintage, an Art Deco piece with a sapphire center stone surrounded by tiny diamonds. Perfect. Thoughtful. Just like him. I said yes through tears, feeling for the first time that my story might have a happy ending after all. When we returned to New York, we began house hunting. Alexander suggested the suburbs, but I wanted to stay in the city that had embraced me when my own family wouldn't. We found it after 3 months of searching a historic brownstone in the West Village, neglected, but with incredible bones and a garden that was rare for Manhattan. The renovation became my passion project. I designed every detail from the restored crown moldings to the custom kitchen cabinetry. I wanted it to be not just beautiful, but meaningful, a physical manifestation of the life I had built from the ashes of rejection. After a year of work, our home was featured in Elle Decor. The article called it a masterclass in personal luxury and a space that tells the designer's own story of resilience and creativity. Alexander suggested we throw a housewarming party to celebrate. Not just a small gathering, but something spectacular to mark what we had achieved. We sent invitations to clients, colleagues, friends, and industry connections. I didn't send one to Montana. I hadn't spoken to anyone in my family in years. The last update I'd had was through a mutual childhood friend who mentioned that Stephanie and Daniel now had twin boys and that my father had retired from the bank. The night before the party, Alexander found me standing in our completed foyer staring at the grand staircase with its wrought iron railing. "Second thoughts about the design?" he asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind. "No," I said. "Just thinking about how far I've come. 10 years ago, I was that scared girl leaving Montana, and now you're one of the most sought-after designers in New York." He finished, pressing a kiss to my temple. "And tomorrow, everyone who matters will be here to celebrate that." Everyone who matters. The phrase echoed in my mind as I fell asleep. The people who had chosen to be in my corner, my true family. I had no idea that the universe had other plans for my carefully curated guest list. The morning of the party, I woke early to oversee the final details. Florists transformed our garden into an enchanted forest of white roses and twinkling lights. Caterers prepared bite-sized versions of my favorite comfort foods elevated to gourmet status. A string quartet set up in the corner of the living room. I was in the kitchen approving the champagne selection when my phone rang. Unknown number, but with the Montana area code. "Hello?" I answered, heart suddenly racing. "Rosanna, darling." The voice was syrupy sweet and immediately recognizable. Aunt Patricia. "It's been too long." My hand tightened around the phone. 10 years to be exact. A beat of silence, then a nervous laugh. "Well, you know how time flies. Listen, the family and I are actually in New York this weekend. Your mother saw that article about your new house, so beautiful, by the way. We thought we might stop by your little gathering tonight. What time does it start?" The audacity was breathtaking. My little gathering. As if she'd been invited. As if we were in regular contact. As if they hadn't shut me out completely. "Who exactly is the family?" I managed to ask, voice tight. "Oh, just your parents, myself, Jack and his wife Stephanie and Daniel. The boys are with a sitter." Everyone. The entire cast of characters who had rejected me, excluded me, made me feel like I wasn't enough. Now suddenly interested when I had a mansion in Manhattan and my name in magazines. "I'm not sure that's a good idea, Aunt Patricia," I said carefully. "Nonsense. We're already here in the city. We've been so eager to see you. Your mother talks about you all the time." Another lie. If my mother had tried to contact me even once over the past decade, I would have known. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "The party starts at 8. I'll let you know." I hung up and immediately found Alexander, who was directing the placement of additional seating in the garden. "My family called," I blurted out, still in shock. "They want to come tonight." Alexander's expression shifted from surprise to concern. "All of them? After all this time?" I nodded, unable to speak further as emotions choked me. "What do you want to do?" he asked gently. That was the question. What did I want? Part of me yearned to slam the door in their faces, to let them feel a fraction of the rejection I had experienced. Another part, a smaller, more vulnerable piece, still longed for reconciliation for the family I had lost. "I don't know," I admitted. "They hurt me so deeply, Alex. They abandoned me when I needed them most. And now they want to waltz in like nothing happened, probably just to see the house and brag about their suddenly successful relative." Alexander took my hands in his. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. If you want them here, we'll welcome them. If you want to tell them to go to hell, I'll make the call myself." His unwavering support brought tears to my eyes. This was what family should be. Someone who stood beside you no matter what. "I think," I said slowly, "I need to see them. Not for their sake, but for mine. To close this chapter properly. But I'm not going to make it easy for them." That night, I dressed with particular care. A deep blue gown that highlighted my eyes hair swept into an elegant updo. The sapphire engagement ring glinted on my finger, a reminder of the love I had found without them. As guests began to arrive, I greeted each with genuine warmth. Maya came early, squeezing my hands and whispering, "I'll run interference if you need me to punch anyone in the face." Professor Williams arrived with her wife, both women elegant in matching tuxedos. Clients, colleagues, friends who had become family over the years, all filling our home with laughter and congratulations. At 8:45, just as the party was in full swing, they arrived. I saw them from across the room, a cluster of uncertain faces at the entrance. My mother, hair more gray than I remembered. My father, slightly stooped now. Jack in an expensive suit that screamed successful doctor. His wife Laura, whom I had never met. Stephanie, thinner than I recalled her, smile tight at the edges. Daniel, barely changed, still handsome in that conventional way. And Aunt Patricia, bedecked in obviously new designer clothing, eyes darting around the room, assessing, calculating. Alexander squeezed my hand. "Ready?" I took a deep breath and nodded. We crossed the room together, his presence beside me, a shield and a strength. "Welcome," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm surprised to see you all here." Awkward greetings followed. Air kisses, stilted compliments about the house. My mother's eyes were wet, but I couldn't tell if it was emotion or an act. "Your home is beautiful, Rosanna," she said. "You've done so well for yourself." "Thank you," I replied. "It's been a long journey." "We always knew you had talent," my father added, as if he hadn't dismissed my ambitions as fantasy. Jack stepped forward. "I'd like you to meet Laura," he said, introducing his wife, a slim woman with kind eyes. "And we have pictures of Sophie, our daughter." "I sent her a blanket when she was born," I said. "She must be 5 now." Discomfort flickered across his face. "She treasures it, uses it every night." I doubted that was true, but I nodded anyway. Stephanie hung back Daniel at her side. She looked unhappy despite her careful makeup and expensive clothes. "Congratulations on your success," she said finally. "And your engagement. Your ring is stunning." "Thank you," I replied. "Alexander has excellent taste." As if summoned by his name, Alexander appeared at my side with champagne flutes for everyone. "I thought we might toast to unexpected reunions," he said smoothly. We clinked glasses, the tension thick enough to cut. Aunt Patricia was the first to break it. "Rosanna, darling, I was just telling your mother how perfect your timing is. My son Justin, you remember him, just graduated with a business degree and is looking for opportunities. With your connections, I'm sure you could find a place for him in your company." And there it was, the real reason for their sudden interest. Not love, not regret, but what they could get from me now that I had something they wanted. "How interesting," I said coolly. "We actually have a very rigorous hiring process at Rose Lux, but he's welcome to submit his resume like anyone else." Aunt Patricia's smile faltered. "Well, I'm sure you could put in a good word. Family is family after all." "Is it?" The words escaped before I could stop them. I seemed to recall a different definition of family for the past 10 years. The group fell silent. Across the room, Maya caught my eye, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I gave a small shake of my head. I needed to handle this myself. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private," Alexander suggested, ever the diplomat. He led us to the library, a cozy room despite its grandeur, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and comfortable leather seating. Away from the party, the pretense faded quickly. "Why are you really here?" I asked once the door closed behind us. "After all this time, why now?" They exchanged glances, no one wanting to be the first to speak truth. "We missed you," my mother finally said. "You missed me. For 10 years. That's why you never returned my calls, never answered my letters, never invited me to a single family event." "You chose to leave," my father countered, a hint of the old stubbornness in his voice. "You made it clear your career was more important than family." "I chose to pursue my dreams," I corrected him. "You were the ones who gave me an ultimatum. Stay and abandon my passion, or go and lose my family. What kind of choice is that for parents to offer their child?" Jack shifted uncomfortably. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "I was wrong. I should have supported you." His admission, unexpected and apparently sincere, momentarily robbed me of speech. "We all should have," my mother added, tears now falling freely. "I was scared for you. New York seemed so dangerous so far away. And when you succeeded without us, it was easier to keep pretending we were right than to admit our mistake." Stephanie hadn't spoken yet. She stood slightly apart, examining a framed photograph on the shelf. It was of me and Alexander in Paris, laughing under the Eiffel Tower. "You look happy," she said almost to herself. "I am happy," I told her. "No thanks to any of you." She turned to face me then, and I was surprised to see genuine pain in her eyes. "I'm sorry about Daniel," she said. "It was cruel what we did to you." Daniel, standing beside her, looked away. "We both are," he mumbled. "Are you?" I asked. "Or are you just sorry that things didn't work out the way you planned? How is married life, by the way?" The flash of discomfort that passed between them told me everything I needed to know. Their perfect union wasn't so perfect after all. "We have beautiful children," Stephanie said defensively. "Twin boys." "I know. I've seen pictures on Facebook. Congratulations." Aunt Patricia, clearly frustrated by the direction of the conversation, interrupted. The past is the past. We're here now trying to reconnect. Can't you appreciate that? Trying to reconnect or trying to capitalize on my success? I asked bluntly. Be honest, Aunt Patricia. Would you be here if I was still struggling? If I lived in a tiny apartment instead of this house? Her silence was answer enough. Alexander, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. Perhaps what Rosanna needs isn't justifications or excuses, but acknowledgement. Real acknowledgement of the hurt that was caused. My father bristled slightly. We've apologized. No, I said firmly. You've made excuses. There's a difference. The room fell silent again, the distant sound of the party a stark contrast to the heavy atmosphere in the library. You're right, my mother said finally. We abandoned you. We chose our pride over our daughter. And then when you succeeded, we were too ashamed to reach out, until we had an excuse. The article? I supplied. She nodded. When we saw your house in the magazine, your father said, "That's our Rosanna." As if we had any right to claim you. As if we had contributed anything to your success. You didn't, I confirmed. But neither did I build this life entirely alone. I had people who believed in me, people who became the family you refused to be. I looked at Alexander, thinking of Maya, of Professor Williams, of all the friends who had supported me through the years. I think it's time we rejoin the party, I said, suddenly exhausted by the conversation. My guests are waiting. As we moved toward the door, Daniel caught my arm. Can I talk to you for a moment alone? Stephanie's expression tightened, but she said nothing. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of my fiancé, I told him. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. I just wanted you to know I've regretted what happened every day since. You were always the one with the real spark, Rosanna. The one who saw beauty where others didn't. I made the biggest mistake of my life letting you go. The confession coming 10 years too late left me cold. Once those words might have meant everything to me. Now they meant nothing. That's your burden to carry, Daniel, not mine, I said. I hope you find happiness, but it won't be through me. We returned to the party, the tension between us palpable. I introduced my family to various guests watching as they tried to fit into this world that was so foreign to them. Jack seemed genuinely interested in Alexander's work. My mother made an effort to connect with Maya. Stephanie stood mostly alone, watching the room with what looked like envy. Near midnight, as the party began to wind down, I found myself standing in the center of our grand foyer. The evening had been a surreal collision of past and present, of the life I had lost and the one I had created. On impulse, I clinked my glass for attention. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I began, my voice carrying through the now hushed room. This house represents many things to me. A dream fulfilled. A partnership celebrated. I smiled at Alexander. But mostly, it represents resilience. I looked directly at my family standing awkwardly at the edge of the gathering. 10 years ago, I left Montana with nothing but a sketchbook and a small inheritance from my grandmother, the only person who ever truly believed in my dreams. I was told I would fail, that my passion was impractical, that I would come crawling back when reality hit. Maya nodded encouragingly, and Professor Williams smiled proudly. Instead, I found a new kind of family, people who lifted me up instead of tearing me down, who celebrated my success instead of resenting it, who loved me for who I am, not who they wanted me to be. I raised my glass higher. So tonight, I'm not just celebrating this house. I'm celebrating all of you who became my chosen family, who taught me that sometimes the most beautiful designs emerge from the deepest pain. The room erupted in applause. I caught my mother wiping tears, my father looking at the floor. Stephanie's expression was unreadable. As guests began to leave, my family lingered uncertainly. Will we see you again? My mother asked as they prepared to depart. I considered the question carefully. I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on what kind of relationship you really want. Not with Rosanna the successful designer, but with Rosanna the person. The one you turned away. We'd like to try, she said softly. If you'll let us. I'll think about it. I promised, not ready to commit either way. For now, Good night. After they left, Alexander and I stood in the doorway of our empty home, his arm around my waist. Are you okay? He asked, concern evident in his voice. I leaned into his strength, considering the question. I will be, I said finally. Tonight was necessary, like lancing a wound that never properly healed. He pressed a kiss to my temple. You were magnificent. Setting boundaries doesn't mean closing doors forever. It means making sure that if they do come through, they do it with respect. In that moment, surrounded by the beauty we had created together, I felt an unexpected sense of peace. The reunion had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. I hadn't realized how much of myself was still tied to that past rejection, still seeking approval from people who hadn't earned the right to give it. Let's go to bed, I said, turning off the last of the lights. Tomorrow is a new day. As I drifted to sleep in Alexander's arms, I thought about the girl who had left Montana all those years ago. How scared she had been. How determined. I wished I could tell her that it would all be worth it in the end. That she would build not just a career, but a life filled with love and purpose. That the very people who had broken her heart would one day stand in awe of what she had created from those broken pieces. And most importantly, that she would learn the most valuable lesson of all, that family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you build choice by choice, love by love. 1 year after the fateful housewarming party, I stood in front of a mirror in the master bedroom of our brownstone, adjusting the delicate veil attached to my upswept hair. My wedding dress was simple but elegant, a sleek ivory sheath with subtle Art Deco beading that echoed my engagement ring. You look beautiful, Maya said, helping me with the clasp of my grandmother's pearl necklace, my something old. Alexander is going to lose his mind when he sees you. I smiled, thinking of my soon-to-be husband waiting in our garden, transformed today into a wedding venue. Do you think they'll come? I asked, not needing to specify who they were. Maya squeezed my shoulder gently. Does it matter? The question gave me pause. Did it matter? After the housewarming, I had maintained cautious contact with my family. Phone calls every few weeks. A brief visit to Montana at Christmas, staying in a hotel rather than the family home. Small steps toward something that might eventually resemble reconciliation. The invitations to the wedding had been sent with no expectation, only an open door if they chose to walk through it. Some had responded immediately. Others had hesitated. No, I said finally. It doesn't matter the way it once would have. Downstairs, the string quartet began playing, signaling that it was time. I took a deep breath and headed down Maya, carrying the train of my dress. The garden was abloom with early summer flowers, rows of white chairs filled with the people who had shaped my New York life. Alexander stood beneath an arch of roses, his smile widening as he caught sight of me. As I began my walk down the aisle, I noticed them seated in the back row. My parents, Jack and Laura, with their daughter Sophie, now 6. Aunt Patricia, more subdued than I'd ever seen her. But no Stephanie or Daniel. Their response card had cited a previous engagement. Though Jack had privately told me their marriage was ending, the twins the only thing keeping them in contact. I felt a momentary pang for my sister, trapped in a life that was crumbling around her. Despite everything, I hoped she would find her way as I had found mine. The ceremony was brief, but heartfelt. Alexander and I had written our own vows, promises not just of love, but of continued growth, of building a home in each other as well as in the physical world. You saw beauty in me when I couldn't see it in myself, he said, voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You've taught me that design isn't just about aesthetics, but about creating spaces where love can flourish. I promise to be that space for you always. My own vows acknowledged the journey that had brought me to this moment. I came to New York broken, but determined not to stay that way. In finding my voice as a designer, I also found my way to you. I promise to remember always that the most important thing we'll ever design together is the life we share. At the reception held in the same foyer where my family had reappeared in my life a year before, I made time to speak with each of them. Jack introduced me properly to his daughter, a solemn child with curious eyes who promptly asked if I was really her aunt. I am, I confirmed, kneeling to her level despite my dress. And I'm sorry I haven't been around much. Dad says you make beautiful things, she said. Could you teach me sometime? The simple request, so genuine, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I'd love that, Sophie. Laura, Jack's wife, seemed genuinely happy for me. He regrets how things happened, she told me quietly while Jack was getting drinks. He talks about you often, about how brave you were to follow your passion. My parents approached during the dinner, both clearly uncomfortable but making an effort. The ceremony was lovely, my mother said. Very you. Coming from her, it was significant, an acknowledgement of my taste, my vision, myself. Thank you for including us, my father added. We don't deserve it, but we're grateful. The admission of fault, however small, was unprecedented. I nodded, accepting it for what it was. A step, not a solution. How is Stephanie? I asked, curious despite myself. My mother's face fell. Struggling. The divorce has been difficult. She's moving back home for a while with the boys. Tell her, I said after a moment's consideration, that if she needs someone to talk to who understands starting over, she can call me. The surprise on their faces was almost comical. Perhaps they had expected continued resentment. But the truth was, success had healed many of my wounds, and love had healed even more. I could afford to be generous now. The wedding celebration continued into the night. Professor Williams gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry in equal measure. Maya performed a surprise dance with some of her company members. Alexander's business partners presented us with a honeymoon gift, a month-long tour of design capitals around the world. As the evening wound down, Alexander and I slipped away to the rooftop terrace for a moment alone before the send-off. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around me from behind as we looked over the twinkling city lights. More than I knew was possible, I answered truthfully. Your family seemed trying, he observed. They are. It's complicated. I don't think we'll ever have the relationship I wanted as a girl. Too much happened. But maybe we can build something new, something with healthier boundaries. He nodded against my hair. I'm proud of you, you know. Not everyone could find that kind of grace. I turned in his arms to face him. It's not really about forgiveness, not in the way people think. It's about freedom. Holding on to that hurt was keeping me tied to the past. I'm ready to be fully in the present now, with you. Back downstairs, as we prepared to leave amid a shower of rose petals, my father approached one last time. I wanted you to know, he said, voice gruff with emotion, that we've decided to establish a scholarship at the local community college for students studying art or design. I blinked in surprise. That's unexpected. It's in your grandmother's name, he continued. She would have wanted it, and it's long overdue. The gesture, imperfect but sincere, touched me deeply. Thank you, I said simply. As Alexander and I ran to the waiting car, hand in hand through the cheering crowd, I caught sight of Maya giving my mother what appeared to be her phone number, of Jack lifting Sophie onto his shoulders so she could wave goodbye, of my father standing straighter than he had all day, a hint of pride finally reaching his eyes. The scholarship was a beginning, a small acknowledgement of the creative spirit that had almost been crushed under the weight of practical expectations. Perhaps it would help another young dreamer find their path earlier than I had found mine. 6 months after the wedding, I discovered I was pregnant. The news came during a particularly busy time for Rose Lux as we expanded into commercial properties across the country. Alexander and I had converted one of the brownstone bedrooms into a nursery, a project I approached with both professional skill and personal joy. As I painted a mural of Montana mountains on one wall, I thought about the child growing inside me, about the kind of parent I wanted to be, one who nurtured dreams instead of dictating them, who saw uniqueness as a gift, not a flaw to be corrected. My mother called weekly now, tentative but persistent in rebuilding our relationship. During one call, I finally asked the question that had lingered for years. Why did you react so strongly when I wanted to study design? What were you so afraid of? The long pause told me she was considering her answer carefully. I wanted to protect you from disappointment, she said finally. I had dreams once too, you know, of becoming a writer, but I let them go for what seemed practical, secure. When I saw you so determined to follow your passion, it reminded me of what I had surrendered. It was easier to discourage you than to face my own regrets. The honesty of her answer stunned me. All those years I had thought it was about me, about my inadequacy, but it had been about her pain all along. "It's not too late, Mom," I said gently. "To write, I mean." Another pause, then a soft laugh. "Maybe it's not. I've been journaling lately, actually. Nothing serious, but it feels good." Jack and Sophie visited that spring. My niece was fascinated by my design studio, asking insightful questions about color theory and spatial relationships. I gave her a sketchbook of her own, remembering how my grandmother had done the same for me. "She hasn't put it down since," Jack told me later by phone. "Laura says she falls asleep with it." To my surprise, Stephanie reached out shortly after her divorce was finalized. Our first conversation was awkward, years of unspoken resentment and hurt creating barriers between us. But slowly, call by call, we began to find common ground. "I was jealous," she admitted during one late-night conversation. "You had the courage to leave, to risk everything for what you wanted. I always did what was expected, the practical daughter, the sensible one." "It's not too late to change that," I told her, echoing what I had said to our mother. "Maybe not," she agreed thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about going back to school, taking some classes in interior design, actually." I smiled at the irony. "If you're serious, I know some good programs." "I'd like that," she said. "And Rosanna, I really am sorry. About Daniel, about everything. You deserved better from all of us." The words so long awaited washed over me like a healing balm, not erasing the scars, but soothing them, allowing them to fade into marks of strength rather than signs of damage. In my 7th month of pregnancy, Alexander and I hosted a different kind of gathering at the Brownstone. Not a lavish party this time, but an intimate dinner for both our families. His parents and sister flew in from Chicago. My parents, Jack and his family, and Stephanie drove from Montana. Even Aunt Patricia came, considerably humbled after her son's business venture had failed spectacularly. We gathered around the dining table. I had designed a massive piece of reclaimed wood that told a story of growth and resilience in its rings and grain. "To family." Alexander toasted, his hand resting lightly on my swollen belly. "Both the ones we're born into and the ones we create." I looked around the table at the faces of those who had hurt me and those who had healed me. At the empty chair we had set for Grandma, a small sketch of hers framed beside it. At Maya, who had become as much a sister to me as Stephanie ever was. At Professor Williams, now retired but still a guiding force in my life. The journey from that frightened girl leaving Montana to the woman I had become had been harder than I could have imagined. There had been times when the pain of rejection had felt unbearable, when the struggle to prove myself had seemed insurmountable. But sitting there surrounded by this imperfect, complicated tapestry of relationships, I understood that every difficult step had led me exactly where I needed to be. That sometimes being excluded from the table you thought you wanted forces you to build a better one of your own. The pain had become my strength. The rejection had given me freedom to define myself on my own terms. And now, as I prepared to become a mother myself, I was grateful for all of it, the bitter and the sweet alike. I placed my hand over Alexander's on my belly, feeling our child kick strongly beneath our joined fingers. A new generation, a fresh start, a family built on choice rather than obligation. "To family," I echoed, "and to coming home to ourselves." When I look back now at the girl who left Montana with nothing but a sketchbook and wounded heart, I hardly recognize her. She was so afraid, so desperate to prove her worth. She didn't yet understand that validation from others is meaningless unless you first validate yourself. That success is hollow if you achieve it only to say, "See, you were wrong about me." The true victory isn't in proving others wrong. It's in proving yourself right. In building a life so authentic that rejection can't shake it, so full that exclusion can't diminish it. My journey from outcast to creator taught me that sometimes being shut out of one door forces you to build a better house. That the family who truly matters isn't always the one you're born into, but the one you choose day by day, love by love. That pain, when alchemized through creativity and courage, becomes not just strength, but beauty. What about you? Have you ever been rejected by those who should have supported you the most? How did you transform that pain into purpose? Share your story in the comments below, and if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it today. Remember, your exclusion might just be the universe's way of redirecting you toward your true belonging. Thank you for listening, and may your own journey lead you home, wherever that may be.